Channel 4 News. Channel 4 News at 6, Middle Tennessee's #1 newscast.
Tom Cameron Swayze.
John Huntley. David Brinker. John Chen. Tom Brokaw.
Terror threat. Al-Qaeda's #2 man vows more attacks on America. President Bush says the U.S. will not be intimidated. Deadly force. New details about that massive bomb that killed 14 Marines in Iraq, and new questions about support for the war on the home front. The fleecing of America, a high-tech camera network that was supposed to protect America's borders, isn't working as promised, and you paid for it. And check this out. What is it that's drawing people from all over the world to a small town in Kansas?
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams. Substituting tonight, Campbell Brown.
Good evening. Al-Qaeda has today issued a new threat against America and its allies. Another videotape message from Al-Qaeda's #2 man, Ayman al-Zawahiri, warning the U.S. to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan. The message also directly linked the London bombings to the involvement of British forces in Iraq and warned more attacks in Britain are on the way. It has been an especially deadly week in Iraq for Americans, and with polls showing public support for the war waning, President Bush responded strongly today, saying the U.S. will not back down. We begin with NBC's chief White House correspondent, David Gregory.
Al-Qaeda's #2, Ayman al-Zawahiri, again on video today, again making threats against the U.S. and its allies. Zawahiri, Osama bin Laden's lieutenant, in his 7th taped threat since 9/11, embraced the London bombings and grimly predicted tens of thousands of military dead in Iraq if the U.S. and Britain don't withdraw their forces. This after one of the bloodiest periods to date in Iraq, 24 American Marines killed in the past week. President Bush in Crawford today seized on the Zawahiri tape to strengthen U.S. resolve at a time of falling support for the war. Mr. Bush said it's a fresh reminder that Iraq is part of the war on terror.
And part of their goal is to drive us out of the broader Middle East. Precisely what this Zawahiri said. He's threatening. I vowed then that we would stay on the offense against these people.
Mr. Bush, after meeting with Colombian President Alvaro Uribe, reiterated that U.S. troops will withdraw from Iraq once a sufficient number of Iraqis are, quote, prepared to fight. The president, however, sought today to cast the struggle in Iraq as a broader clash between ideologies, freedom versus the tyranny of the terrorists.
We've had these kind of clashes before, and we have prevailed. We have prevailed because we're right. We have prevailed because we adhere to a hopeful philosophy, and we have prevailed because we would not falter.
White House officials concede the president remains under great pressure to convince Americans the war in Iraq is on the right track, something aides say he will attempt to do throughout the month. David Gregory, NBC News, the White House.
And inside Iraq today, the U.S. military said 4 more Americans have died, including a Marine killed in the same area where 14 Marines lost their lives yesterday. And we have exclusive new information now about the source of even more powerful weapons now being used to target U.S. troops. Here's NBC's Pentagon correspondent, Jim Miklaszewski.
It's the #1 killer of American troops in Iraq. The massive roadside bomb that killed 14 Marines yesterday flipped their 37-ton vehicle on its top and blew it some 40 feet down the road. And tonight, disturbing information that some of the most sophisticated of these deadly weapons are reportedly coming from Iran. U.S. military and intelligence officials tell NBC News American soldiers intercepted a large shipment of high explosives smuggled into northeastern Iraq from Iran only last week. The officials say the shipment contained dozens of so-called shape charges manufactured recently. Shape charges are especially lethal because they're designed to concentrate and direct a more powerful blast into a small area.
They'll go right through a very heavily armored vehicle like an M1 Abrams tank from one side of the turret, potentially right out the other side.
Military officials say there's only one use for shaped charges, to kill American forces, and insurgents started using them in Iraq with deadly effectiveness 3 months ago. Intelligence officials believe the explosives were shipped into Iraq by Iran's Revolutionary Guard or the terrorist group Hezbollah, but are convinced it could not have happened without the consent of the Iranian government. And today, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld accused Iran of attempting to derail the democratic process in Iraq.
The last thing the Iranians want is to see Iraq succeed as a democracy.
In a seemingly strange alliance, the Shia Iranians are aligned with the Sunni insurgents to drive the American military out of Iraq.
They are desperate to get us out of Iraq. If we succeed in Iraq, they will be surrounded by elected governments.
Military officials say the explosives seized from Iran are only the tip of the iceberg, and the deadly bombings in Iraq are far from over. Jim Miklashevsky, NBC News, the Pentagon.
Now to the fallout from the Marine deaths this week. Emotional and increasingly political fallout. Ohio has been hit very hard this week. 20 Ohio-based Marines killed in 2 incidents. And as NBC's Carl Quintanilla tells us, sentiment is turning against the war in this political swing state as the death toll climbs.
In Ohio, a second wave of Marines' death notifications today reached the family of Lance Corporal Brett Whiteman. On Monday, he left this phone message.
Just calling, see what's going on. Tell him all right. Talk to you later. Bye.
But 19 hours later, he was killed.
I just met him at the door and said I already knew. And the chaplain said, it's what all the mothers say.
85 Ohio natives have now been killed in Iraq, ranking the state 4th in the number of servicemen lost. Tim Rock's son, Nate, who was killed this week, was an ardent supporter of the war effort. But in his Rust Belt town of Toronto, Ohio, and across the state, a majority of Ohioans, 53%, disapproved of the president's Iraq policy as of April.
I've been watching the polls lately, and you see it slipping, and what comes to my mind is like, wow, people are finally catching on.
Measuring the political fallout from those killed in action is delicate, some say tactless.
The world has a stake in the outcome of Iraq.
But in a state that tipped the last presidential election and that this week nearly awarded a congressional seat to an underdog Democrat in a safe Republican district, some analysts see early signs of a shift.
It's a very close state, so almost anything bad from the Republican standpoint could switch it over to the Democratic side.
The progress in the past year has been significant.
Loyal Republicans in Ohio say this week's casualties, while difficult, are part of a broader mission of protecting the nation.
I feel like what we're doing is the right thing.
That sentiment now collides with a different one.
This is getting to be ridiculous. All of our soldiers dying.
In a political bellwether state where the fallen are no longer just names, but neighbors. Carl Quintanilla, NBC News, Toronto, Ohio.
Meanwhile, today marks 4 weeks to the day since the first of those terror attacks in London, 2 weeks since the second botched attempt. And with intelligence warning of a possible third wave of attacks, British police launched their largest security operation since World War II today, assigning thousands of officers to patrol the London Underground in those famous double-decker buses. In Israel today, another chapter in the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. An Israeli army deserter dressed in a military uniform opened fire today on a bus carrying Arab passengers in northern Israel. NBC's Martin Fletcher now on what apparently triggered the man's deadly rampage.
The terror on this bus began today when an Israeli soldier, a passenger, suddenly opened fire with his gun. Witnesses say his first bullet killed the driver, the second a woman. Altogether, 4 Israeli Arabs dead, 13 wounded. Then furious Arabs rushed the soldier and beat him to death. Edan Natanzada was a 19-year-old extreme right-wing settler. His father said he deserted from his army unit 3 weeks ago. He was upset by Israel's plan to pull all the settlers out of Gaza later this month and give the land back to the Palestinians. Arab and Jewish Israeli leaders condemned the attack and appealed for calm.
This is a horrendous murder of the worst kind.
For days, police and soldiers have fought running battles with right-wing activists trying to break into Gaza to support the settlers there. It's a confrontation pitting Jews against Jews about the future of their country.
We're talking about a tinderbox, and every match can light it up.
Tonight's shooting was one step toward what police call the nightmare scenario. They're afraid a right-winger will commit a massacre to provoke so much fighting the pullout can't take place. So with 2 weeks to go to the withdrawal, there's great fear here of more and worse attacks.
Martin Fletcher, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
We do have some good news to report tonight. NASA says it is now okay for Discovery's astronauts to come home. They will not have to perform another spacewalk to make repairs. NBC's Tom Costello joins us again tonight from the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Good evening, Tom.
Campbell, good evening to you. The space shuttle Atlantis has been taken off its standby rescue status. Discovery given a clean bill of health after engineers took a close look at their protective thermal blanket here. As you know, it is just below the flight deck window, and it appears to have ripped on liftoff. NASA now believes that it is unlikely to cause them any problems whatsoever on re-entry. The shuttle now scheduled to return to Earth early Monday morning. Campbell?
All right, NBC's Tom Costello in Houston tonight. And up next, the latest on what's happening in the African country of Niger, where millions are hungry. Where's the help they desperately need?
I get headaches a lot. Some weeks it's like I get one every day. It was so frustrating. I used to take anything in reach. I knew some medicines cause stomach problems, but my stomach felt fine. And then I found out, even if you don't feel it, aspirin can be damaging to your stomach. So maybe there's some problems going on that you don't even feel. I'm not okay with that.
The pure pain relief of Tylenol works fast on your headaches and is safer on your stomach.
Medicare. It covers hospital stays and doctor visits. But for many people, something's been missing. Until now. Prescription drugs. Starting November 15th, sign up for Medicare's new prescription drug coverage. Everyone on Medicare is eligible. You could save hundreds of dollars a year, but you have to sign up. Call or log on for a free booklet on getting started. Find out how Medicare's new drug coverage can work for you.
Cholesterol comes from two sources. It's not only from that buttered crab, but from Krabby Aunt Betty. And not just from that ice cream pop, but from Mom and Pop as well. Your cholesterol doesn't just come from food. It also has a lot to do with family history. Ask your doctor about Vytorin. A healthy diet is important, but when it's not enough, adding Vytorin can help. Vytorin treats the two sources of cholesterol, food, and what your body makes naturally based on family history. Vytorin was proven in clinical studies to lower bad cholesterol more than Lipitor alone. Vytorin is not for everyone, including people with liver problems, women who are nursing, pregnant, or may become pregnant. Unexplained muscle pain or weakness could be a sign of a rare but serious side effect. Vytorin may interact with other medicines or certain foods, increasing your risk of getting this serious side effect. Simple blood tests are needed to check for liver problems. Follow a healthy diet and ask your doctor about adding Vytorin. For the two sources of cholesterol, remember the name Vytorin. That's Vytorin.
No matter where it is, no matter what it takes, nobody gets the big interviews like Rita Cosby live and direct. Premieres next week on MSNBC.
NBC News in depth tonight. A nation on the brink. The West African nation of Niger, also pronounced Niger. It is the second poorest nation in the world, and right now there is a desperate shortage of food. Entire families are starving. Of Niger's 12 million people, more than 25% are at risk for extreme hunger and malnutrition, according to the UN, with young children especially vulnerable. We have two reports tonight on the crisis. First, Garant Vincent of our British television partner, ITN.
The admissions tent at a feeding centre in Maradi. Huge numbers of severely malnourished children are being brought here, and there's no way the nurses can treat them all. Only those whose lives are in immediate danger get a pink bracelet, food and medicine. Those who aren't quite desperate enough are asked to leave. Hunger had left its mark on this little boy, Aminu, in such a cruel way. Malnutrition was attacking his skin.
He'll get better. We'll get him better. You'll see he'll be running around. The mother will leave here smiling.
Aminu's mother, Zuera, didn't leave here smiling. She was convinced her son wasn't going to make it, and she was right. Aminu died. My boy lived his last weeks in hell, says Zuera. No mother has suffered like I have suffered. In this tiny village, 6 have died in the last 2 months. It's weeks until the next harvest, so in the meantime, the older ones are being fed weeds. These people are totally reliant on the land, and because they're so desperately poor, there's no safety net. Word spread that help was on its way, and the women came from miles around. hundreds of them queued from daybreak. It's slow progress, and some of the women get frustrated. In seconds, the queue disintegrates and tempers flare. The distribution point reopens, and one by one the children are seen and the nurses do their job. A few boxes of biscuits, not much, but enough to know my child has a chance. Geraint Vincent for NBC News, Niger.
This is Mike Taibbi. It was a perfect storm of negatives that led to a food crisis for millions. What happened? An infestation of locusts that decimated crops, the worst drought in 15 years, and the Niger government keeping grain prices too high for too long. Worst of all, the world wasn't paying attention or donating much money. A crisis in the making, one United Nations official says, that should have been averted.
What is happening was largely foreseeable as early as November.
Last November. But despite appeals for donations then, the Christmas tsunami and then the violence-plagued famine in Darfur, Sudan, diverted attention from Niger.
We do find it hard to deal with more than one crisis.
In fact, it wasn't until British television reports last month that Niger was seen as a place in desperate need. Now, a crisis the UN says could have been addressed last year for about $1 per person in need will cost 8 times that much, and perhaps thousands of lives. One veteran aid worker in Niger says fully half the children surveyed are at risk of starvation.
Is it famine? Is it not famine? What is actually happening is there are 2.5 million people in Niger who are severely hungry.
Hungry to the point of death because help simply didn't get there quickly in a country that's not at war and has no problems of access.
It is one of the easier countries. It is one of the countries that we shouldn't have let slip.
To keep Niger from slipping again, aid groups are developing health, water, and food for work programs.
To build up their community's resilience and resistance to the same thing happening next time.
But the focus right now is to get enough food to enough people fast enough to prevent starvation deaths on a massive scale. Mike Taibbi, NBC News, New York.
And if you want to help, there is a list of organizations accepting donations for the hungry people of Niger on our website, nightly.msnbc.com. And up next, a fleecing of America with national security implications. A network of cameras at the border, but why don't they work?
At Hyundai, we believe for all the ways we can help you survive an accident, we should provide just as many to help you avoid one. The all-new 2006 Sonata, the only mid-size sedan with electronic stability control and 6 airbags standard. It's a Hyundai like you've never seen before.
Arthritis sufferers have had enough bad news lately. Here's some good news. Aleve is the #1 pharmacist-recommended pain reliever for arthritis for the 6th year in a row. Ask your doctor about the good news. Ask your doctor about Aleve.
Finally, a denture adhesive with no messy ooze.
Announcing Polygrip Strips. These slim strips are pre-measured to give you a neat, clean seal with all the hold of a cream. New Polygrip Strips holds all day in a neat new way.
Sometimes you just can't get away from high cholesterol. When diet and exercise aren't enough, adding Lipitor can lower your bad cholesterol from 39 to 60%. And if you have several common risk factors, Lipitor can reduce your chance of a heart attack by 36%. Lipitor is one of many cholesterol-lowering treatment options in addition to diet and exercise that you and your doctor can consider. Lipitor is not for everyone, including people with liver problems and women who are nursing, pregnant, or who may become pregnant. Simple blood tests are needed to check for liver problems. Tell your doctor about other medications you are taking or if you experience muscle pain or weakness, as these may be signs of a rare but serious side effect. Ask your doctor about Lipitor today.
Hello! I'm asking people to take the Kellogg's 2-week fiber challenge. Just 1 bowl of frosted mini wheats a day. Can I count on your support?
2 weeks? A lot could happen in 2 weeks.
Yes. You could start feeling less And start feeling more, more, precisely. And how great would that be?
He'll try it.
Excellent. Take the Kellogg's Fiber Challenge. 1 bowl, 2 weeks. And see if you feel a difference.
2 weeks?
Tomorrow on Today, family fun turned deadly. A 7-year-old dies on a boat ride. How safe are amusement parks? Simple tips that could save your child's life. Only on Today.
The men who dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. NBC Nightly News tomorrow.
There is word tonight that Chief Justice William Rehnquist, who has thyroid cancer, has been taken to the hospital again with a fever. This is Rehnquist's 3rd hospital visit that we know of this year and the 2nd in 2 months. Now to the safety of our country's borders and a plan to deploy cameras to help in that effort. But at least in one area, what sounds like a good idea turns out to be a fleecing of America. Here's NBC's Kevin Cork.
Along the dusty Arizona-Mexico border, part of a sophisticated network of video cameras monitoring thousands of miles of open country. But there's evidence the U.S. Border Patrol cameras have been unreliable, have broken repeatedly, and that some were never installed at all.
This is not just about another waste of taxpayers' dollars. This is a threat to our national security.
In the post-9/11 world, the cameras became part of a project called America's Shield Initiative. But federal auditors say that security was compromised by the shoddy and incomplete work of the contractor, International Microwave. Government auditors visited 8 sites and found not even one of them was fully operational. And at 3 sites, no work had been done at all.
It's plain and simple gross mismanagement of a major government contract.
Auditors also found broken and uninstalled cameras in Washington, Michigan, and New York State, all paid for by taxpayers.
Along the northern border, you have cameras that don't work when it gets warmer than 70, 75 degrees. That's a real problem.
Auditors also say IMC repeatedly substituted more expensive cameras with cheaper ones, while still billing at the higher rate. Since then, IMC has been acquired by another company that had nothing to do with the original problems. And in a statement, the new company, L3 Communications, said it's acted to remedy the situation, installed systems at 246 border sites. 92% are currently operational. But critics wonder,
how many more Border Patrol agents could have been hired with that money?
At a time when Homeland Security is so vital, a fleecing that threatens to leave America's borders insecure. Kevin Cork, NBC News, Washington.
On Wall Street today, stocks finished lower. The Dow fell more than 87 points on the day. The Nasdaq was down more than 25 points. When we come back, why kings and queens are all the rage in the middle of Kansas.
Cholesterol comes from 2 sources. It's not only from that foot-long Frank, but from your Grandpa Frank. And not just from that Virginia ham, but from your Aunt Ginny, too. Your cholesterol doesn't just come from food. It also has a lot to do with family history. Ask your doctor about Vytorin. A healthy diet is important, but when it's not enough, adding Vytorin can help. Vytorin treats the 2 sources of cholesterol, food and what your body makes naturally based on family history. Vytorin was proven in clinical studies to lower bad cholesterol more than Lipitor alone. Vytorin is not for everyone, including people with liver problems, women who are nursing, pregnant, or may become pregnant. Unexplained muscle pain or weakness could be a sign of a rare but serious side effect. Vytorin may interact with other medicines or certain foods, increasing your risk of getting this serious side effect. Simple blood tests are needed to check for liver problems. Follow a healthy diet and ask your doctor about adding Vytorin. For the 2 sources of cholesterol, remember the name Vytorin. That's Vytorin.
Got gas, pressure, bloating? Tums doesn't treat gas. To treat gas, use Gas-X. For fast, powerful relief.
Popcorn?
Ooh. Gas-X beats the bloat, and acids don't.
Look, Mold, she's about to choose a seasonal allergy medicine.
Pick one of those. You could be suffering in 6 hours.
Choose any of those, you could be drowsy. Allegra 180!
Lasts all day and non-drowsy.
Why did I even pack those others?
Not one of these allergy medicines can give you long-lasting seasonal allergy relief without the risk of drowsiness. But Allegra 180 can. Non-drowsy Allegra's worked all day. For people 12 and over, side effects alone may include headache, cold, or backache.
Allegra's gonna work all night, too.
Long-lasting Allegra. The relief goes on.
Nature fanatic, health nut. Grape nuts eaters have been called many things. Unfortunately, they haven't heard a word of it. The unique nutty crunch and delicious taste of grape nuts. Live life your own way.
Our science teacher, and last year she let us dissect a frog. Cool. I get a rabbit in
Let's
my
go,
homeroom.
kids.
That's so cool. I get a
Chris.
marker, more recess, go on 5.
Ready for school? Good thing Walmart's got all the coolest clothes for back to school at their always low prices. So you can get your kids off to the right start.
Hey! Oh, come on.
Tonight at 6.
Is Perry March looking forward to his day in court? A revealing interview with his attorney. And dozens of police officers search for clues in another missing person case. Find out why this woman's mother fears the outcome may be like Janet March.
Tonight at 6 on Channel 4 News.
The Nightly Journal, brought to you by Walmart. Always low prices. Always.
Time now for Nightly Journal, our look at stories that make up everyday life in America. There are some pretty unlikely things going on in the tiny town of Lindsborg, Kansas these days, like a visit from former Russian President Mikhail Gorbachev scheduled for October. That's in addition to the flood of kids that have descended upon Lindsborg this summer. So what is the attraction? In a word, chess. Here's NBC's Bob Faw.
Checkmate. Question, where in America are wood pushers so cutthroat? Where do kids learn from grandmasters and dream of becoming one?
It's good development for the brain.
But a game we often associate with eggheads and oddballs flourishing here in the middle of nowhere in God-fearing, no-nonsense, corn-fed Kansas? Kansas? I'm sorry, but you can see nowhere from here, I believe.
Yeah, right. I understand that.
Specifically, Lindsborg, Kansas, population 3,200. Known for lingonberries and ceremonial horses, a Swedish stronghold.
One of my favorite sayings is that, you know what I'd be if I weren't Swedish?
No, sir.
I'd be ashamed.
Well, good luck. Enter Russian emigre Dr. Mikhail Korenman, who came here to teach chemistry 6 years ago and then went door to door asking merchants for money to start a chess camp. This is the last place on earth where you might want to try this.
Probably.
3 times, though, Korenman brought in the world's greatest chess player, Anatoly Karpov. And when Karpov was paraded down Main Street, all Lindsborg began to think, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Anatoly Karpov, of which some of us had heard of him, and you're going, you're kidding, he's coming here?
Here, dubbed Chess City of the Year by the U.S. Chess Federation, where it is hardly just a game.
I hope that these kids through chess will learn more about how to make the right decision in their life.
It takes skill, and if you practice, you can get better.
It's not winning.
It's just thinking. Thinking and fun and more.
In a town bursting with pride. Are all the children here above average?
Oh, certainly. Absolutely. There's no question.
Where they don't have to ask, who's got game? Bob Faw, NBC News, Lindsborg, Kansas.
And that is Nightly News for this Thursday. I'm Campbell Brown in for Brian Williams. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a good night, everybody.
Middle Tennessee's #1 news starts right now.
Tonight, the legal maneuvers take a new turn for Perry March. He is facing his first court hearing while the custody of his children hangs in the balance. Good evening. Welcome to Channel 4 News at 6. The first step in the prosecution of Perry March will play out tomorrow morning in California. March is in isolation tonight in a jail cell in Van Nuys, the same facility where O.J. Simpson was once held. We begin tonight with Channel 4's Jeremy Finley in L.A. Jeremy?
Demetria Perry March, the former Nashville attorney, now charged with second-degree murder of his wife Janet, is here in the Van Nuys City Jail. That's the building directly behind me, awaiting his first court appearance here in Los Angeles tomorrow morning. For the first time in many years, Perry March is alone tonight, away from his family and friends in Mexico, facing charges that have drastically changed his life. Time is all Perry March has now. Time to await his first court appearance and reflect over the last 24 hours of his life. His time in Mexico with his new wife and 2 children ended yesterday when authorities arrested him and brought him to Los Angeles. He was immediately booked and fingerprinted. He spent some time in a one-room holding cell in the Pacific Division, what in Nashville we refer to as a precinct. He was then transferred to the Van Nuys City Jail, where